Hi, Frank. I'm going to give you some feedback on your policy brief. Um, in terms of your self-evaluation, it's pretty incomplete at this point. Uh, and you would need to do it to actually get a grade. I gave some pretty clear guidelines of how to do this. Your headings are almost as long as the entries in there. They're very short. Um, I have no evidence that you've had daily discussions with GPTs, multiple edits, additions, and deletions to form the final document. Um, I don't know even what that means, and I'll talk about the document. Um, Having no challenges whatsoever is unusual. Um, and I am wondering if it's just too easy. I don't know. I like that you have the course outcomes, but you haven't seen how you've met any of the course outcomes. So I have no evidence whatsoever that you've met any of the course outcomes. So that's an issue. You have to establish, here's the course outcome, and this is how I've met it. Uh, you've used Notebook LM and ChatGPT. You said Claude. Now I'm wondering why you use Claude. So that would be interesting to see why you've done that. And because maybe it does give a different perspective. So that's something uh, to learn. If there's in here, there's no growth whatsoever. So it says growth. Then the project is almost meaningless. Uh, so it's good to know how you've grown. The usual tools. Well, those aren't the usual list of suspects. Believe me. uh, so you've used these things. I'm curious about why you use those four when you really could have used one and what they contributed. So what did ChatGPT contribute? What did Claude? Why did you use Claude? In what way did you use Claude? Um, Task completion and document below. Just saying each, I guess what's important is when you're doing this is how you did it. How did you do it step by step? I'm sure it took 6 to 7 hours. So you didn't just say go. What did you do? What were the specific tasks that you did? And is there any documentation, weekly documentation of that? You have just link to your documentation. I don't know. Um, Improvement, none. Okay, so this reflection is just uh, it's not a graduate level reflection. It's almost like just get it done, and I don't think it's useful doing this. And it is because there's lots of room for improvement, and I'll show you. You have this document here. The one thing is you have these references. You are making so many statements here, and there are no links to the references at all. Um, Second, your references there are no academic references here. And, or, let's see, what are they? Let's see, you've got Canada, University of Toronto. Interesting what that's just specific to that. Just even references about developing good policies. Even references looking at what are the challenges to develop good policies? Because as I read this, for example, here, you got your executive summary. Key summary is for the government to establish a national framework for responsible Gen AI use. I just don't think that's ever going to happen. Uh, One, because education is under the purview of the provinces. So it's going to be very hardly to do that. Um, Second, and we've talked about this, if we're talking about Gen AI literacy in a specific subject area, um, presumably the appropriate use is also going to be domain specific, and the regulations are going to be domain specific. There's no point in talking about all the essay and writing restrictions and policies in a mathematics course, for example. They're different rules, different policies. The other thing I would need convincing of is why don't current policies actually uh, meet the needs of this, particularly, I mean, disciplinary policies. Student discipline, and academic misconduct is academic misconduct. It doesn't have to be specifically AI academic misconduct. We know we're not going to catch people, for example. That's not going to really happen. So there's going to be different strategies for doing that. For higher education leaders, you're not going to get an it's hard enough to get a policy for a particular university. And when they've tried, they realize it's very difficult. And one of the challenges, which would be good in a reference, is that it is changing at a lightning quick pace. What Gen AI was 2 years ago is very, very different from what it is now. What it can do and what it will, you can imagine in 2 years it'll be completely different. And so it's going to be very difficult to do that. Governments and higher education don't work so well, and I'm not even sure that it would work well, because they're two different entities. Uh, and then to have consistent, why do we need consistent? Why don't we looking for domain specific attitudes? So these are questions that I was looking for in this kind of document. So when you make these things and you define everything, all this has to be referenced. Otherwise, it's just something you've put down on paper. It doesn't make it so. And especially in this kind of document, I think it would have been better probably just to look at higher education, not government. But it's tricky to do. So you're putting the government context. So the Treasury Board is a guide on the use of generative RNS tests aimed at institutions of the government. They document, okay. So in a way, it already has the document. So, and then broader level, they have in the public service, they have that document, and they have this. So they have these things already. Why do we need new ones? So you'd have to criticize, like, what's wrong with those ones? Higher education is struggling to do this because it is changing so fast. And you might have, it would be interesting to know how many have actually done it. You've got one, but I'm not sure. It's see that the sector is going to be fragmented because universities don't work together. They work on their own. They will not work together. Um, And then you have Ben Karam here. Now that's okay. So that is a reference. Though it's not properly referenced. It's not APA. And there's Ben Karam. So these are not. It's not APA. B Karam class BW. Um, so this person's arguing for a national policy. I don't see the reasons for that, but maybe I've missed that in the document. He's arguing for it, but I don't understand how it's even going to happen, to be honest. And I don't know really. Let's take a look at Ben Karam. Like, who is Ben Karam? Like, what is this guy? I don't know. This is policy options. It's a commentary. Okay, so I'm not even sure. Without coordination among universities risk deepening inequities about how students and faculty use generative. Well, there's always going to be, that just seems to be it's just the way it's going to be. You can't make any, with academic freedom, you're always going to have, I don't know if it's inequity, but you're going to have, it's not going to be consistent, that's for sure. Um, and this is sort of just a very limited piece by, like, limited in terms of we don't know, like he doesn't have reference or something, he's just sort of saying things. Invested billions in structure. First, a national regular clear standards would help universities, colleges. It might, but it also would be just restrictive if you know the nature of what universities do. uh so okay. So why isn't there? I think the question is, why wouldn't there be this? Why doesn't everybody get together and have a universal policies for everything? And there are some definite reasons why, because each university thinks they know um, what's right. And then you're getting into different things about pedagogy and literacy and that sort of thing. And that's not something you can. That's not a policy thing you can make. Everybody has to know this, or everybody has to be able to do this. That just will never work. It hasn't worked before, and it won't work again. Um, and then you have it. AI is showing up in different ways here, but I mean, goodness gracious, you have all the references in the world from your report to put into there. I'm not even sure how that's as relevant to. That's more. That's interesting. It depends what you want within your policies. These emerging patterns and observations are really kind of superficial. It's almost like you weren't into this project. I don't know. Adoption tends to start internally, then expand. Well, that's I again, where's the reference to that? I don't know what's governance lags tools. I don't know what that means. Transparency, human-centric design, oversight are emphasized. Again, not sure what that means. Equity defined. Again, not sure what that means in the AI context. Um, so these are not explained well enough. And you have need for national coordination. I'm not sure there is a need for national coordination. I could be wrong. Um, yeah, certainly been wrong before. I just need to know the argument. Just some guy, Ben, saying we need the national coordination doesn't convince me. And then you have the implications leading to these very, it's just not going to happen. Well, mind you, 12 months and the whole Gen AI world is changing. In 12 months, it'll be very, very, very different from what it is now. Um, who's going to be part of an AI education inter, intern AI education advisory council? Like, who's going to be there? We're going to have full-time people doing this. Um, and then, so someone's just going to do that for 3 months. That's all they're going to do. It's possible, I guess they could focus on that. Pilot AI literacy modules, that's not going to work. You're just not going to have that. It'll never happen that you're going to have common literacy modules that everybody's going to follow. That will, just because you never have it with technology, you never have it. I have professors that barely can use PowerPoint right now. They don't have to do it. You can't make them do it. That's the nature of universities and higher education. um, Develop a national framework for use. I'm not even sure you need to do that. There's some really, really good stuff with UNESCO right now. Not sure why we'd necessarily do that. There's some really good guidelines now. So maybe it's guidelines, but not compulsory frameworks. So you have action items for deans and institutional frameworks, issues and clearance or restrictions for the materials cross graduate. Okay, I mean not it's not unusual, not unreasonable to develop some of these policies. Um, it's just very, very difficult. Yeah, you're not going to have any money to do a chief AI officer. Uh, but it's certainly you want someone. I mean, this isn't unreasonable. This is where this is actually probably pretty good, although I'm just not sure where you got the ideas, um, and how you got them. And that goes back to your self-evaluation. How did you get this stuff? Is it just hallucinations from Gen AI? I don't know. I'm just being facetious there, but full transparency in regard, that's not going to happen. I mean, well, yes. I mean, it already is required in terms of document. Requires students to seek documentation and writing an unambiguous approval. That's really, really hard to do. And it's hard to do in an atmosphere of academic freedom. Clear and complete description of citation. You can see the irony of this. You're actually producing this document without any clear and complete description of your citations, and how you actually produce this document. Fund curriculum development with not going to happen. Um, uh, Fund training programs, not unlikely to happen. They'll do some of that, but it'll just be part of it. There's just no money to do this. It's not. That's just practical. It'd be nice to do, but not going to happen. Student orientation models, the development, as fast as they're developed, they're going to be almost out of date. Um, Rural, remote, indigenous communities, for AI. First of all, they need internet access. So that is probably, and yeah, and then you're not ever going to say that this kind of policy where every student graduates with fundamental understanding how Gen AI tools work. Not going to happen. I'd love it to happen, but it's just going to be too much debate. Um, anyway, I think I've given you enough feedback. These are probably the part of this document, so I can see the work. I don't. The problem is I don't see where the ideas came from. So maybe they came from those documents, but then I'd like to know who they are, because if they come from Ben here, that's not going to work. We got the public awareness group, so I can see what this is, the government of Canada. So that presumably, however, it's done in 2021, 2022. So it's actually incorrectly referenced there. That's not 224. Okay, well, I don't know why it's 224, but anyway, that's useless because that means doesn't mean anything. But maybe I'm missing something here that there's a document that is um, maybe this PDF version. Is that something that's a little bit better? No, it's 2021. So that's a useless document. And then there's this one, which title strategy for this particular service. And so they're doing this, although we really should have a link to the actual document, right? So that should be the link. And then this strategy was done by the Treasury Board in March 2025, which means that's when it was produced, which means it may be dated already. And so you got this document here, and then there's policies. Should also read in contempt. Okay. So that's a reasonable document if I were looking at it. This document here also by Guide on the Use of Generative AI. So is this the same guide? And they do have references in here. I don't see the date of this thing, to be honest. So that's a little bit of concerning. And then your University of Toronto, you have their overview, but it's a clear guide. I think I don't know when it was developed here. Are they allowed for research? Graduate students, it's clear guidance. It's pretty general stuff, which I guess policies are. Anyway, that's 20 minutes of feedback, which you're not going to listen to. Bottom line, you really need to improve this self-evaluation.